to our Ottawa City Commission study session. Do we have any public comments? No. Thank you. Commissioners, we have some items to be placed on a regular city commission agenda, which consist of the November 1st regular meeting minutes and then the November 6th study session regular meeting minutes. Did you have a chance to review those? Are you okay with moving those on to the next agenda?
Yep.
We'll do that. Thank you. All right, items for presentation and discussion. The first one is the ordinance rezoning property at 1426 East Wilson from C2 to R2. Neighborhood Community Services Director Lucas Neese, please come on up.
Oh, good join with Zach Martin.
All right, please come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mayor and Commissioner, I don't know if everybody's had the chance yet to meet Zach Martin. Started as planner. Has it been 3 weeks now?
I think almost exactly a month yesterday. So
Hit the ground running and is a great asset to the department and the city. So he's got a presentation on the rezoning and turn it over to him.
all right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lucas said, my name is Zach Martin. I'm the planner here, and we're going to start off with the rezoning of the Northeast Village project at 1426 East Wilson. First slide right here, as I mentioned, it is at 1426 East Wilson, and this is for a rezoning from C2 restricted commercial district to R2 medium density residential district. The following slide shows the general location of the property. It is right there at the southwestern corner of East Wilson Street and North Davis Street. This far left-hand photo right here shows an aerial of the surrounding area, including current development and kind of the agricultural and lower density uses located there as well. We also have a map of the current zoning there in the center. Again, right now, the property is currently zone C2, and it was recently approved at the Planning Commission for R2 zoning. And then on the right-hand side, we have the future land use as shown within our future land use map, which does indicate this area as commercial and residential. Following slide shows a better view of the aerial of the surrounding area, as well as an image of the current conditions of the property on the top right hand. You can see that the property is currently vacant, and the surrounding land uses, as mentioned prior, do include low density residential with a mixture of duplexes and single family homes. So some background on this property, the proposed zoning would be considered lower density than the existing commercial zoning and would allow for the development of a new housing project, which would benefit the community at large. The proposed zoning district would also be in line with the surrounding zoning and uses, which is primarily single and two family homes. And the initial application that was requested included the zoning district actually of R3 high density residential. This was before my time here at the city, but during that meeting, there were concerns over high density residential uses being permitted in perpetuity at that location. So the applicant was amenable to the change in the request of the zoning from R3 to R2 zoning, which is what is presented here before you today. This would include the addition of a CUP application, which is the second item on the list here. And this would allow the accommodation and the continued progression of the development at that site. Going into the analysis and the findings, the overall intent of the R2 district is to provide for 1, 2, or 3 family dwellings with some accommodations for 4+ family dwellings as conditional uses. And I mentioned that conditional use permit, and they have been open to applying for that with the addition of the downgrade of the zoning from R3 to R2. Staff did find that the proposed zoning would be consistent for the area it is located, would not create an undue burden on the existing services or transportation networks, and that the proposed zoning would be consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, which places both residential and commercial uses in this area. The surrounding blocks are zoned a mixture of R1 and R2, which both allow for accommodation of 2 family dwellings. Also makes use of a long vacant lot, creating infill residential development with aesthetically compatible design, meeting the zoning code requirements and respect for the surrounding uses. Additionally, the application for rezoning at this location has been an item of discussion with the Planning Commission at a number of meetings prior to where it is reached today. One was on September 13th, and it was formally heard at a public hearing at a special meeting held on September 28th. During this public hearing, discussion was held addressing the rezoning and, as mentioned before, concerns regarding the higher density residential potential at this location if it was allowed to be proceeding as R3. To address these concerns, the application was amended to propose R2 zoning to allow for the continued progress of the development, and there were no public comments received at this hearing as no public was in attendance at that meeting. The planning commission approved the motion to accept the staff findings as their own and recommended approval of the rezoning to city commission by a vote of 5-0. Based on staff findings and the recommendation of the planning commission, staff does recommend the approval of this rezoning application.
So the planning commission is 5-0, right?
Yes.
Do you know anything about any public comments or anything by people at that meeting?
It was a properly noticed public hearing. No public chose to attend that meeting.
Okay.
So it didn't, whatever conclusions one draws from that, I suppose.
Good question.
In addition to Zach's presentation, I have been at all of those meetings, happy to answer any questions. There's also a representative from the development group here, Doug Bohide, and I imagine he'd be happy to answer questions.
What is so in one of the drawings, like packet page 13, for example, there's the duplexes around that outer portion that in the middle, is that parking or what is that?
Garages.
Garages, okay, so some covered parking for, yeah, okay.
As far as water runoff, that's all been dealt with too. Looks like 2 retention ponds, so that's all been handled and the water runoff's good.
So we'll continue to work on finalizing with the developer and finalizing site plan, finalizing development agreement, but those aren't outstanding concerns to us.
And I know with the last housing study we had, there was a need for this kind of housing. I think these are each about 900 to 1,000 square feet, all on one level. Is that right?
Approximately.
Sorry. Like that. That's the older I get, the more I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Zach, I noticed the label on your shirt. You're an Adidas fan, not a Nike fan. For some
Yeah, it's
reason. That's the only thing I know.
You'll have
to take that.
You know, too.
You look pale.
It's his first time, Commissioner, it's his first time
Look at
here.
you on there. I'm
Really,
sure
it's
you're
his
up the
first
center.
time.
That's right, okay.
Initiation.
Good thing it's happening this Monday instead of next Monday.
Whatever.
We'll see.
I do agree with Commissioner Skidmore. I think, you know, this lot, I grew up on the north side walking on Wilson Street and it's been vacant for a long time. And I think it'd be great to see something there. The housing study showed, you know, the kind of some aging in place housing was needed in Ottawa. So I think this looks like a great proposal. And I think, you know, obviously looking at the surrounding areas, it's kind of odd that this is C2 already. To me, kind of looking at kind of around the similar area, those 2 parcels that were C2. So I certainly in favor of the rezoning.
Commissioners, do you have any additional questions for Mike?
Yeah, is there a time frame this needs to be approved by? I'm just thinking this is the first time our study session has seen this. I know it's been presented to the planning commission several times with public comments available. Sometimes we don't like to necessarily approve something so quickly into the next meeting, but then again, if there's a time frame involved in this, I don't want to delay anything. This is important. Is that an issue for time?
And I should clarify that the staff request is not for a decision to be made today.
Yeah, I know, but for Wednesday.
Place it on Wednesdays, and I think if the commission would prefer to, you know, to see that happen in another week, that would not be.
And when Lucas and I discussed the timing, given the lack of participation in the citizen comments, we just figured it would be a kind of a good workflow for going from immediately following the planning commission to the city commission for consideration. But we'll have 2 more study sessions between now and December for consideration.
Yeah, I see your point there. I do like the floor plan, by the way. I think it's very efficiently designed, so that's good. I like that too.
I personally don't need to see it held over.
I'm like you.
I was gonna say, to me, they're likewise, units going in just in that surrounding area. It's not like we're dealing with something like we have before. And at this point, it's just a matter of rezoning.
And just to clarify, it is rezoning. This isn't final plat, final building permit, any of that. So it's just rezone of the parcel.
Commissioners, any other questions for either Zach, Lucas, or Doug?
Good job, Zach.
If not, you okay with moving this one on to Wednesday's agenda? We'll do that. All right. The next one will be the ordinance creating a conditional use permit for the property at 1426 East Wilson to allow density of proposed use.
So this second presentation, has some additional, information regarding the actual CUP application itself, but it does refer back to some of the zoning items as well. And they're fairly tied together for allowing this, development at this location. So again, this, property at 1426 East Wilson, it's also applying for a conditional use permit to allow for the development of 40 single-family dwelling townhomes on that currently vacant property. You all have seen the plans and been able to review those, so that you were able to get a little bit more detail on what those actually entailed. We have a similar map right here. It's the same location, same current zoning, future land use, with the additional imagery of the current state of the parcel. And going into the analysis, the site is currently in review for approval by the City Commission for R2 zoning request. And it is approximately 3.63 acres and has been undeveloped since its creation to our knowledge. Within the R2 district, 4+ family dwelling units are allowed with a conditional use permit. And with a 4+ family dwelling, which a townhouse would be considered, the required minimum lot area would be 3,500 square feet per dwelling unit. Required minimum setbacks applicable to this site are 20 feet in the front, 6 on the side, 10 on the side abutting street right of way, and 20 in the rear. The zoning itself, again, we've mentioned the intent of the R2 district, and through a CUP, the R2 district would allow for this type of development. And the property is currently undergoing that rezoning here, and it would align with the stated goals of the comprehensive plan that was mentioned in the previous presentation. But just to dive a little bit deeper into that, the plan specifically calls out supporting the development of affordable and appropriate housing for all segments of the community. This is simply an image of the current code, calling out where this particular development would be considered a conditional use within the R2 zoning. As I mentioned before, the minimum lot area for a single family townhome development would have to meet the requirements outlined within the code. By doing the calculations, the resulting density per dwelling unit on the site is going to be about 3,900 square feet, which would exceed the minimum required density of 3,500 square feet for this type of development. And then the additional drawings that have been provided by the applicant do meet all of our standards, also outlined within the zoning code. Excuse me. So reviewing this application against the factors outlined on the application itself, staff has made the following findings, that the proposed use would be both consistent and compatible with the intent and purpose of the zoning code, as outlined within the R2 district, as it allows for moderate density as a conditional use. It would also be consistent with the comprehensive plan, which includes the development of, I put adorable, but affordable, is the correct word there. They're adorable. It is adorable.
Doug said they're gonna be adorable.
So
If
affordable.
if only somebody had read that for you. Sorry.
Yep, we're fine.
I guess.
So, yeah. We just learned about PowerPoint there. It's been great. Adorable, affordable, and appropriate housing for all segments of the community. This proposed development would plan to be targeted at the 55+ community and would provide affordable and functional housing built to the standard, compatible with the existing development in the area. Staff also found that the property is suitable for the proposed use. It is currently vacant, and this development would allow for infill development. It would also meet the requirements as outlined within the city code as mentioned before. It would also not place any undue burden on the existing transportation, utility, or service facilities in the area. What is currently available on the site is suitable for the addition of proposed townhomes and will be sufficient for development. And staff has found that the applicable factors for consideration of a CUP have been met, with the exception of the conditions of approval outlined within the staff recommendation. This item was heard at last week's Planning Commission meeting, and it has been an item of discussion prior to that date as well, including September 13th, September 28th, the October 26th study session, and was formally heard on November 8th, which was last Wednesday. During this public hearing, discussion was held addressing the project and the conditions as proposed by staff. And Planning Commission did approve the motion to accept staff findings as their own and recommended approval of the CUP to City Commission by a vote of 5-0. With that, staff did recommend approval of this conditional use permit with the following conditions. This would include the resolution of a structure that is built over the southern property line before issuance of building permits. Landscaping in compliance with requirements of Article 20 of the zoning regulations shall be shown on the site plan and subject to review. Sidewalk construction constructed to the City of Ottawa design standards along Davis, Wilson, and Crosswinds Drive. And then a fully executed development agreement between the developer and the City of Ottawa. Building and driveway permits obtained before construction.
So these will be rentals or any chance to be purchased, strictly rental properties.
It's, I'd let Doug speak on that, but it's really designed as a 40 units under single ownership, so
Okay.
presumably rental.
And so lawn maintenance, everything taken care of, like.
On that resolution of structure built over southern property line, is that the structure at 902 Davis, that garage, or what's
Yes.
that, okay, that's kind of what it looks like on the map. So is that them, I guess, working with their neighbor to rebuild the neighbor's garage, or?
It's in flux.
Okay.
Essentially, we've presented a few different options for them to go down, whether that be a variance through the BZA or something of that nature. But it is an ongoing discussion as far as the resolution of that item.
Can you tell me about what is it on the southwest corner there? It appears to be like kind of where in the middle where there's a bunch of garages, but is that just a green space left open, or what is that?
I
What is that
apologize, my
designed
AC.
for? Sorry.
Oh.
I mean,
On a different one,
the
it's
fence
marked as a
playground?
park. Yeah.
well, but
the
it's marked as a
southeast corner?
playground, although also on the upper corner, it says fence playground. So there's two playgrounds? Or there's it says fence playground, and this doesn't,
Southeast has playground.
right there in the middle.
Oh.
Right here, in the middle where
On
the,
the ends of the.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
yeah, no, go.
As green space, I think, we've also
just
seen
green space?
trash enclosures there, and these aren't necessarily final.
Okay.
Um,
So it's not that there'll be two playgrounds there, because it does say fence playground on the corner of it.
My understanding would be that it would be just a generalized open green space that we can either apply towards the landscaping aspect of it, which we would need to see and have open to the community
and
within the living area.
Doug may like to speak to that.
I'm not sure of exactly where you're talking about.
I'm just talking about right here in the green space. There's all those garages, but there seems to be some open space there.
That's, our plans are to have kind of a gathering area,
Okay,
maybe a patio
gazebo
type
or
thing with
something.
some picnic furniture or something like that. A gathering area where somebody, if they have their family over, they've got a place to go.
okay. Thank you. And then does this meet? It does occasionally concern me about making sure that our fire trucks can get in there and turn around. Does this meet the specifications?
Yeah.
We don't. Oh,
It,
I was like,
it's
come on,
been,
Ken.
it's been through DRC, but
Okay,
It's had a turning radius on to it, so it's met all the requirements.
In the 55 and older, it says about a 3-year term. Explain how that works. Is that after 3 years, anybody's eligible, or how does that work?
that's our understanding, that there's a grant that has been received as a three-year requirement, that it be marketed only to 55 plus, and that after that 3 years, then they'll be free to open.
And so I saw the playground. I thought, well, grandkids are,
That's a minimum. requirement.
okay, all right.
I think we will find that that'll be an ongoing dynamic of that community because it's needed and because 55 and older are more responsible. They will take care of things.
Yeah.
And I'm in that group. I know I don't look it.
I don't say, I gotta see your driver's license. I'm not.
You got a few up here that are under 55. We haven't quite agreed to this yet, so. Commissioners, any other questions for Zach, Lucas, or Doug? If not, you okay with moving item B to Wednesday's agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, we will do that. Zach, thank you. Great,
Yeah.
great job on your
Good
first
job.
presentation. Lucas, thank you. Doug, thank you for your interest and investment in the community.
Am I allowed to come back on Wednesday?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
My boss would like me to call you
Yeah.
with good news.
All right.
Today or Wednesday? No.
Thank you. All right, item C is the request for direction to publish public hearing notice at 7 PM on December 6, 2023 to amend the 2023 operating budget. Director Landis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So as you'll remember, we typically come to you around the November, December timeframe, this has been our process in the past, to ask for any amendments to the existing current year's budget. So this would be focused on the 2023 budget. Earlier this year, you approved the 2024 budget. And so this is going all the way back to last year and last August when you approved this year's budget. So in your packet, there's an explanation in the memo with a little bit of background, which I thought I might share in case we have some public watching. So the budget authority that you adopted in 2022 really establishes your authority, budget and expenditure authority for each one of those funds. And at that time, everything that we put together are estimates based on what we know at that time, right? So we're working a whole year in advance on every one of our funds. So under Kansas statute, if you're needing to spend more than what you budgeted in any one given year, you need to come back and follow the same budget process that you did with the original budget, which is hold a public hearing, and then you would approve it as the city commission. And so in this case, we've prepared for you 3 funds that have they were really more extenuating circumstances, things that weren't anticipated when we adopted the original budget. And so I'd like to cover each of those 3 funds that we'd be asking for your support in publishing the public hearing notice on. So the library fund, I think each year we bring this back to you, and the reason is because the library board does bring to you a budget every year, and you review that, and it gets included in our budget process. But the fund under the city is really just for collection of the taxes that comes in, support for their mill levy and their motor vehicle taxes, and then we turn around and distribute it right back out to them. So as of right now, we've collected 99 or 98 roughly percent of their ad valorem taxes and distributed those out, and about 84% of the motor vehicle and delinquent taxes. You will never or should not be collecting any more ad valorem taxes than what we budgeted for, but motor vehicle taxes are really always a really rough estimate. And typically we bring in more than what we budget because we budget conservatively in our revenues. And this is no different. So we're anticipating that the final December payments that we receive for them could push us over the budget authority for that fund in order to turn around and reimburse those funds to them in this one year. Now, we could roll that to next year and hold those over until January, but then we end up with a carryover in the audit. We end up with a carryover on their books, on our books. And this does make it a little cleaner if we just amend it, give ourselves the authority to distribute it. And then regardless of what the amount is that comes in, we can get as close as we can. I did overestimate on the expenditure. I took what we've received to date and I added back the December distribution from last year just to try to get us to a number. And I think I'm somewhere around, what is that, 30,000 over what we adopted for the budget, just in case that distribution comes in higher than what we think it might be. I think that last year that final distribution might have been around 18 to 20,000. So we should have a little bit of flexibility in there in case there's something. A lot of times delinquent taxes come in late in the year. They're getting ready to turn around, make their new payments. So do you have questions on the library fund? No? Okay. The second one is our special sales tax fund for Proximity Park. And if you'll recall, we did receive a $5 million grant for the, we call it the base grant, but building a stronger economy in Kansas. And we received that in 2022, which was later in the year. And that was to go to fund 4 projects. the projects were centered around, 3 of the 4 projects are centered around Proximity Park. And one of those projects is the extension of the gas line to Proximity Park. The other one is support of the water tower and water utility improvements so that it can be better served. And then the 4th project was a lift station on the northeast side of town. So out of those 3 projects, we knew that I think our original estimates were over $8 million for all 4 of the projects. And we had to match the $5 million with a 25% match. So a portion of that came from wastewater to support the lift station. The remainder of it came from your special sales tax fund for the match, the 25% of the $5 million. Because we know that those projects are going to be somewhere between 5 million and 8 million after we got the final bids for each one of those projects. Each one of them are in motion right now, and we may need to make additional payments towards each one of those payouts in the way that even if you get an invoice in December or January, if it's for December construction or service, it comes back to this year, and this is a budgeted fund. So we want to make sure we have enough authority to cover those costs. And we're doing that in the form of a transfer to a grant fund where we're tracking all of those individually because we have to report on each one of those projects. It's possible that we will get the second half of our base grant dollars in before the end of the year, and we may not actually need this budget authority to make the transfer in this year. But if we don't end up using this amount, it'll just roll over to your beginning fund balance for next year. And these are all dollars that were not dedicated to any one specific payment. The only dedicated payment right now annually that comes out of this fund is your debt service for the original project.
Well, so you include the investment income on that improvements, so good job on that, ladies. That's good. See that.
Yes, that it makes a difference in every fund that we have. Yes. So if do you have questions on Proximity Park in that budget? No. And the golf course fund is one that at this point does not have a dedicated revenue stream. And if you'll recall, we did do a budget amendment in 22 to establish the fund, but 23's budget was already in place. So we needed to do an amendment for this year as well. So we do have some limited expenditures this year. They are the tax return for 2022 from the previous way that it was organized, and then some insurance for the course itself for this year. And everything that is expended from that fund right now is just being covered by a transfer from the general fund. It's possible that we could have put those expenditures in the general fund, but we felt like we should start a really good accounting of what's being spent out of this fund so we can be forecasting better in the future. So while it's a very, very minor, small number to do a budget amendment for, in our minds, it was in order to keep this fund, structured so that we can see in the future what we have spent and what we will be spending. So those are the 3 funds that we're requesting a budget amendment for. And the first step in this process is just to notice the public hearing. The public hearing date would be December 6th. That's your first regular meeting in December, and it's your 7 p.m. meeting, which we try to hit those meetings for your public hearings. And so if we were to put this in the newspaper on we'll send it to the newspaper this week, then it would be published next week. It needs to be published for 10 days prior to that public hearing, and that gives us plenty of time before the December 6th meeting. So we're not asking for any action or even for you to move it on to your next meeting. If we could have some consensus that it's okay to go ahead and publish the public hearing. And that would be our request for today.
Any questions for Director Landis?
Good with
Yeah, there are no
Says-
questions. Do you need a motion out?
You just need.
I don't think
you just
so.
need
right?
Direction, don't you?
Mhm, just direction.
Yeah, I
to
think
public,
you have
right?
consensus to publish.
Okay, and then we'll try and bring it back to you at the study session before that regular meeting, so we can have another discussion, answer all your questions then, but that way it's right before your public hearing. Okay, thank you so much.
I guess I should thank Blake for that investment income. I forgot to ask you here, so thank you, sir.
All right, item D is the ordinance amending section 2-107, the regular meetings of the municipal code. City Attorney Finch, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. You had discussed at prior meetings the idea of changing your meeting schedule. Currently you have 6 meetings a month. And you're talking about just kind of institutionalizing Wednesdays as your meeting date. The city code and prior ordinance allowed for the setting 2 formal meetings per month. And then study sessions to be set by resolution. You have a copy of the older resolution from 2019 in your packet. The redraft is a page ahead of that, page 103 on the bait stamp. This would simply set meetings for Wednesdays. And depending on whether it was the first or second or subsequent meeting of the month, you see the times there as discussed in the meeting. So this is for consideration discussion today, any questions that you may have, and then you'll note that this does not take effect until after publication, and it should be January 1st for the start. So this would be for next year, not just for not like most ordinances where we just take effect on publication.
The only concern I've got is we're cutting our study session from 4 to 2, and normally we go until almost 5 o'clock on average. I'm concerned we can go later. But again, and especially during budget season, so I assume, like you brought up, Counselor, was that we could start at 3 o'clock some morning, some afternoons, just as long as we put a notification out ahead of time.
Right. And we've kept the flexibility here. You see middle of the page, you can cancel or reschedule any meeting at your sole discretion upon proper notice. You have a list of interested parties who have requested notice of city meetings. And this comes up from time to time. How much notice do we have to give? The notice has to be reasonably calculated to let folks know, and it has to be given to those people who have asked for notification of the meeting. So typically your local media outlets, there may be a citizen or two or a group of citizens who want that information. And if anyone's asked, they get that notification. And clearly, if you're heading into budget season and you're finding you need more time, you know, you can give weeks of notice. At minimum, probably a week of notice on some of those if you wanted some additional time. I will say that as many times as you have full agendas, we all know there are times that you come in for a meeting and it's, you know, 7, 8, 9 minutes in length. Because there hasn't been a crush of business, or some of your meetings, you're getting updates and presentations instead of action items in order to have those things come before you. And I think you can always expand this. You can always go back to adding in Monday study sessions if you want. You can expand the length of these meetings if you want. But there is a great deal of staff time that goes into preparing items to bring to you. And in the transition to our new city manager, who's tried to bring more documentation to these meetings. As you see, these packets are quite a bit larger than they maybe used to be when we got 1 or 2 sheets. I know that staff are working hard to give you meaningful updates on specific things that are happening in the community, as well as making the most of your time here so that you have everything you need to make a decision in the space allotted for your meetings. But happy to work through any flexibility issues that you have or want, and certainly this gives you the chance to reschedule or extend meetings.
I think for my sake, the 4 works great. I think having longer meetings less frequently works easier for, I think, several of us, I would say, in that case. And if we do need to move them forward, I think that works, but evening's a little bit easier to work in sometimes than throughout the day.
I think it's great that former Mayor Jorgensen showed up just to defend his resolution
Yeah.
that he signed 4 years ago. That's really why you're here. Mayor Jorgensen, we appreciate that. That's totally a signature.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for our city attorney? If not, do you want to move this proposed ordinance onto Wednesday's agenda?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, item E is the ordinance creating a memorandum of understanding for the purchase of property at Legacy Square. Mr. Silcott?
Well, and city attorney bench as well. The MOU follows up the discussion that occurred previously on October 23rd, where we were directed to draft an MOU for the transfer of property in conformance with the ARPA funding. And so what we have here before you is an MOU establishing this understanding in exchange for that $475,000 for the two parcels identified as 109 South Walnut and 102 North Walnut, which contains the improvements that are existing for the public at large that promote tourism and enhance the quality of life for our community. As I understand it, although it was conceived prior to my arrival, that this space was to be ultimately conveyed to the city for operation at some point. And so this is what's been brought before you today. With that, I'll turn it over to the city attorney to provide additional commentary.
Yeah, just briefly, commissioners, this works a little bit like the skeleton of the deal, and just like the skeleton may not look like the final body with muscle and skin on it, this is pretty pared down. I know that when the OCPI group came to you, they talked about wanting to expand the project and maybe add that crossway from the park into downtown, add the sound system, and those things are still on the table. What this does is very succinctly get to the heart of the city's involvement, and that is you're working with those who have made in-kind contributions, making kind of a challenge of your own that, hey, we will contribute some of these ARPA funds to see this project be completed. But this is not a donation. This is not a gift. This is not a giveaway. This is at its core the acquisition of real estate by the city. ARPA funds have to be used for acquisition, and usually it's one-time acquisition. So real estate obviously lends itself very well to that. So you're essentially getting double the benefit. You're killing two birds with one stone, or as Travis Kelce says, doing two things at once. You're helping to facilitate the continuation of the project, but you're also acquiring this real estate. And so this MOU really focuses on that distinction. And it says here that OCPI is free to use this as a challenge to other donors, but the reality is that you're giving the money here in order to obtain the real estate. Two parcels. One is at the northern end of that block. Many of you who are long timers around here remember the old flea market property. That is where now the restrooms and the smaller stage type area and the green space is at. And then immediately catty corner across the corner where the Ottawa truck is located and the playground equipment. Both of those parcels would become City of Ottawa property in exchange for the 475. OCPI will be responsible for clearing any of its debt that it may have and satisfying all of its creditors in order to convey clear and marketable title. And so you'll be taking that free of encumbrances when you take it.
And so if somebody wants to rent this space, who will they be contacting? Will still be OCPI operating this?
Yeah.
How will that work? Or is there a fee to rent the space for some events?
So you remember a long time ago, the chamber came to you with some fee structures, and there was some concern about that, and there were discussion. I think those were eventually lowered. Right now, the chamber continues to operate as the booking agent for Legacy Square, and that includes the city's property that we already own, which is the parking lot on the southern end of that half block. So when there are concerts and things like that, it's usually booked through the chamber. And I know that one of the things that the city manager is going to be working on and talking about is how do we program this space going forward, both ends of the block. And I don't think a final decision has been made yet on how that programming will ultimately look, Commissioner. But for now, it will probably be status quo. And I know they have some events that are already booked through the chamber. And so I think those are conversations that will be ongoing as the city takes over ownership. But it would probably be premature for us to say, we're going to program that space right now because we don't yet own it.
As far as liability goes, then would that fall on the city? Do we can buy more insurance for that property? How would that?
Just flood insurance, Commissioner.
Oh, wonderful. We can save that much already. But I think like a playground, somebody gets
Right.
on the property.
So under the Kansas Tort Claims Act, there is broad recreational use immunity for cities. So, and those cases include parks and playgrounds and facilities like, what you're acquiring here with Legacy Square. So in addition, we do carry insurance on our facilities for the condition of the facilities themselves. Someone were to drive into one of the pillars or damage the restrooms in some way beyond our deductible. But for the most part, your recreational use immunity covers individuals who may be injured while there.
Good, thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions for our city attorney? You okay with moving this one on to Wednesday's agenda? We'll do that. Thank you. Thank you. That will move us on to comments by the city manager. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Public Works, just want to highlight that the crews did complete the reported project from last study sessions report for the culvert replacement at 17th and Eisenhower. That was completed on time and on schedule. We had 2 employees, Chad Pickert and Jordan Powell, complete their Road Scholar 2 class on supervisor's role in enhancing cooperative working relationships, and provide you a little background there as to what that program is and the 28 courses and 8 electives for the 200 hours that go with it. Want to report that we had several utility production power plant employees attending a tour of Wolf Creek facility. Our lineman set the first of 3 transformers at Victory Dodge dealership for part of that project. And then the water reclamation facilities UV replacements underway. And so that has a budget of $566,080, and we've expensed currently just under 30% of that, and anticipate further expenditures coming over the next 2 to 4 weeks as this equipment is installed and upgraded. And I'll send an email out with the photos that show the modification to our flow channel into the UV lights for the filtration on the water that's leaving the facility and entering the Merdazine. And then in that too, there'll be 2 middle images of the old control unit space that's been replaced, and the bottom image of the new installed units. Also, regarding our police, I want to say that I'm proud to report that the department's received formal acknowledgement that our CALIA accreditation continues and has been renewed following the 2023 site visit, and Chief will give a more detailed report on that in December. IT, we're continuing to review and evaluate the new phone system that became necessary mid-year following notification for the lack of support for our existing system. And then I want to say that we are studying a situation where we had a piece of equipment, an air handler at OMA, fail on us. So we'll be coming to you with a purchase forthcoming to repair and replace that. So unfortunately, accidents happen, if you want to say, or equipment fails in an untimely manner. So we'll present that going forward. So that concludes the crux of my report for today.
Thank you. Commissioners' reports, Commissioner Graves,
I have no report.
Commissioner Taylor,
None today.
Commissioner Clayton,
None today.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
Well, I want to say, day on the job, or the job fair at the high school went very well. I was glad to see multiple departments from the city there representing the options that these juniors can have when they graduate. And so I'm just glad to see good representation from our city hall on that. So thanks to all who worked and participated in that. And I guess I'm glad to see our parade seemed to be successful. I wasn't able to be here for that, so it sounded like I saw a lot of pictures online and saw that our previous city manager was the grand marshal, so that was good to see that as well. I was at K-State and helped unfurl the flag at the pregame show, 100 yards by 60 yards. And this is a big flag, and it took about 200 of us to carry it and then unfurl it. And that was quite an honor to be able to be part of that program. John, do you see it? I don't know if you saw from your seat.
Yeah,
It worked.
I saw you carrying too. So I
Thank you
can
for that.
validate your report.
And I did not fall down like I thought I was about to. I did feel-
I've got pictures.
Yeah. During the rehearsal, someone did fall and that we covered him with the flag and he got out okay. But I was like concerned that was gonna happen to me, but nonetheless, it was really an honor to be a part of that pregame show. And we came away with a victory too. That was always a good thing too, so.
It's bad news when you're draped with the American flag.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to have that happen to you. You're right, especially that size, right? But anyway, that's all I have today.
All right, I just got a few announcements. Our regular meeting is this Wednesday at 10 a.m. here at City Hall. And then we have a study session next Monday, the 20th at 4 p.m. here at City Hall. I will move that the commission recess into executive session at 4:50 for a period of 15 minutes with the city attorney and the city manager present for the purpose of attorney-client consultation. The justification for the closed session is to engage in confidential and privileged communication with the board's attorney. The open meeting is to resume in the room at 5:05 and no action will be taken. Is there a second?
I'll second
All
that.
right, motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you.